9. The Convergent Theological Witness. The preceding 8 sections have completed the logical architecture of this book's argument, establishing through neuroscience, philosophy, artificial intelligence, physics, and psychology that infinite consciousness is the sole and necessary subject of all experience. This section adds something different in kind to that argument, not a further logical proof, but a different order of evidence entirely. The vast majority of the world's population identifies as religious and holds scripture, not formal logic, as the most authoritative testimony to the nature of ultimate reality. It would be a significant omission for a book reaching the conclusions this one reaches to pass over what the world's major religious traditions have themselves reported across millennia through revelation and contemplative realization rather than philosophical demonstration. This section is offered in that spirit and with that limit clearly stated. It is not presented as evidence supporting the book's logical argument. The argument of the preceding sections stands or falls on its own terms, independent of anything in this section. It is presented instead as a verification of convergence, an observation that the world's religious traditions have repeatedly arrived at a strikingly similar conclusion regarding the oneness of ultimate reality and its relationship to the individual self. The same conclusion this book reaches through a more detailed and explicit logical process. The scriptures of the world's religious traditions, composed across roughly 3.5 millennia in different languages, by different peoples, in most cases with no historical contact between them at the moment, their foundational texts were written, converge on a single underlying description of ultimate reality when their testimonies are placed side by side. That description resolves into a small number of recurring claims made independently and repeatedly across traditions with no access to one another, that the ultimate is inescapably present everywhere, that it is nearer to the self than the self is to itself, that it is the single source from which all differentiated existence proceeds, and by which that existence continues to cohere, that it pervades the furthest reaches of the cosmos and the innermost depths of the mind without distinction between the two, that it is, at the deepest level a thing can be examined, identical with what that thing most fundamentally is, and that it alone is permanent, while everything conditioned, bounded, and separate is transient by comparison. Each of these claims appears, worded differently but structured identically, across scriptures that share no common origin. Taken together, and read finally through a single verse of the Quran that draws every one of these threads into a single image, they describe not 7 traditions offering 7 different accounts of reality, but 7 independent witnesses converging on the same one. The first and most insistent theme across all these texts is inescapability. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. Psalm 139, 7-8. He is with you wherever you are. Quran 57:4. Wherever you turn, there is the face of Allah. Quran 2, 115. 3 scriptures, composed in 3 different languages, separated by centuries, converge on the identical structural claim. There is no location, physical or metaphysical, from which the ultimate reality is absent. This is not merely a claim about God's reach. It is a claim about the impossibility of any boundary between the ultimate and the immediate. The second theme intensifies the first. not merely that the ultimate is everywhere, but that it is nearer to the self than the self is to itself. We are closer to him than his jugular vein, Quran 50:16. This is echoed in a different register in the Hindu and Sikh material below, where the ultimate is found not beside the self, but as the self's own innermost substance. The third theme is source, the claim that the ultimate reality is not one thing among the things that exist, but the ground from which all things proceed and the coherence by which they continue to exist at all. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Colossians 1:17. One God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. Ephesians 4:6. In him we live and move and have our being. Acts 17:28. The Tao produced one, one produced two, two produced three, three produced all things. Tao Te Ching, chapter 42. Here the Pauline formula and the Taoist cosmology, texts with no historical contact whatsoever, state the same structure. A single origin from which all differentiated multiplicity unfolds, and within which that multiplicity continues to cohere rather than dissolve into disconnected fragments. The fourth theme extends this source outward into the entire visible cosmos and inward into the human being simultaneously, refusing to separate the two. We will show them our signs in the horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that it is the truth. Quran 40:153. The same reality that grounds galaxies grounds the interior of a single human mind. A claim, this book's own argument, moving from the quantum vacuum to atomic interiority to the human psyche, has independently reconstructed by an entirely different logical route. The fifth theme is identity, the most direct and the most striking of all, not merely that the ultimate reality is present within the self, but that it is the self, at the deepest level the self can be examined. That which is the finest essence, this whole world has that as its soul, that is truth, that is the self. Chandogya Upanishad 6:8-7. I am the self, seated in the hearts of all beings. I am the beginning, the middle, and the end of all beings. Bhagavad Gita 10:20. He himself is the bumblebee, flower, fruit, and tree. He himself is the water, the desert, ocean, and the pond. Guru Granth Sahib, Ang 596. The one light pervades all the created beings. Guru Granth Sahib, Ang 13. Four scriptures from two entirely distinct religious families, Vedantic Hinduism and Sikhism, arrive at the identical claim. The one reality does not merely create or sustain the many things that exist. It is what those things, examined to their root, turn out to be. The sixth and final theme returns to a claim this book has made throughout, that the ultimate reality alone is permanent, self-subsistent, and unconditioned, while everything else, examined honestly, is transient and dependent. Everything will perish except his face. Quran 28:88. Everyone upon the earth will perish, and there will remain the face of your Lord, owner of majesty and honor. Quran 55:26-27. He is the first and the last, the outward and the inward, and he has knowledge of all things. Quran 57:3. All conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. Dhammapada 277. All the constituents of being are lacking in an ego. Dhammapada 279. The Quranic and the Buddhist material arrive at this same conclusion from what look, on the surface, like opposite theological starting points, one explicitly theistic, one explicitly non-theistic, and yet the structural claim is identical. Whatever is compounded, whatever is bounded, whatever is called a separate self, is transient, and without independent, self-sufficient existence. Only the unconditioned ground endures. Taken together, these verses, drawn from Judaism, Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, Sikhism, Taoism, and Buddhism, describe one reality from every conceivable angle. Inescapable, nearer than the self, the source from which all multiplicity proceeds, present equally in the furthest cosmos and the innermost mind, identical with the self at its deepest root, and alone permanent against the transience of everything conditioned. This is not 7 traditions making 7 different claims that happen to resemble one another. It is 7 independent witnesses converging on a single structure, the same structure this book has reached, through an entirely different and more extensively documented logical process in infinite consciousness. The convergence traced above finds its most complete single expression in one verse, the Ayat al-Nur, the verse of light, which draws together every theme this section has identified: ubiquity, source, permanence, and the relationship between the ultimate reality and the manifest world, into a single, densely layered image. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. The example of his light is like a niche within which is a lamp. The lamp is within glass, the glass as if it were a pearly white star lit from the oil of a blessed olive tree, neither of the east nor of the west, whose oil would almost glow even if untouched by fire. Light upon light. Allah guides to his light whom he wills, and Allah presents examples for the people, and Allah is knowing of all things. Quran 24:35. A word of caution belongs here before this verse is read for what it can offer this book's argument. Every translation quoted throughout this section, and every translation of scripture that has ever been produced, is necessarily a literal rendering of words that were never intended to be received as literal description alone. This is especially true of a verse as densely symbolic as the Ayat al-Nur, built from an image, a lamp within glass within a niche, that the verse itself immediately gestures beyond. Allah presents examples for the people, signaling that what is being offered is a likeness, not a physical description of God as a luminous object among other objects. The word translated here as light, nur, carries in the original a semantic range considerably broader than the English word suggests. Illumination, yes, but also the underlying principle by which anything becomes manifest, knowable, and present at all, an active, generative reality rather than a passive visual quality. Read in this broader sense, and in light of everything this book has argued about the physical face of infinite consciousness, the quantum vacuum from which all energy and matter derive, light in this verse is not naming a literal glow. It is naming what this book has called energy, the underlying generative activity from which the entire structure of physical reality, matter, force, and form alike derives, and by which it is sustained. On this reading, the verse is not merely stating that Allah illuminates the heavens and the earth, as a lamp illuminates a room. It is stating that Allah is the energetic ground from which the heavens and the earth themselves, in their entire physical substance, derive precisely the relationship this book has argued holds between infinite consciousness and the quantum vacuum. And through the vacuum, every subsequent layer of physical, biological, and psychological reality surveyed across this book's 9 sections. The verse's closing image, a lamp whose oil would almost glow even if untouched by fire, light upon light, describes a luminosity so intrinsic to its source that it requires no external cause to ignite it, an apt description, in the vocabulary this book has developed, of a necessary being whose existence and activity depend on nothing outside itself, the uncaused ground from which every caused and contingent thing, including the flame that any ordinary lamp would require, ultimately derives. Every verse gathered in this section, the psalmist's inescapable presence, the Quran's declaration that God is nearer than the jugular vein, the Pauline affirmation that all things hold together in him, the Upanishadic identity of Atman and Brahman, the Sikh vision of the one light pervading every created being, the Taoist unfolding of the 10,000 things from a single undifferentiated source, the Buddhist recognition that every conditioned thing lacks independent existence, converges here. In a single verse, on the same final image, light upon light, one reality generating, sustaining, and pervading every subsequent layer of a universe that has no existence apart from it. This is the same reality this book has called infinite consciousness. What this book has demonstrated through logic, neuroscience, physics, and psychology, across sequential sections of sustained argument, religion arrived at long ago through revelation and contemplative insight. This book takes no position on the truth of every claim made by every religious tradition, nor does it enter the broader debate over the relative authority of scientific and religious ways of knowing. Those are questions for other books to address. Its concern here has been narrower and more precise. The specific scriptural testimony across 7 independent traditions regarding the nature of infinite consciousness. That 2 such different paths, one built on centuries of careful reasoning and empirical evidence, the other on faith and direct spiritual experience, should arrive at the same destination on this specific question is not a coincidence to be explained away. It is a convergence to be taken seriously.